Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be reading from Job chapter 3 verse 1 through 26, and our focus will be our response to our loss. That's what we're going to be focusing on today, and we're going to go ahead and hop straight into it. So we're going to start from Job chapter 3 verse 1. It says, "At last Job spoke, and he cursed the day of his birth. He said, 'Let the day of my birth be erased, and the night I was conceived. Let that day be turned to darkness. Let it be lost even to God on high, and let no light shine on it. Let the darkness and utter gloom claim that day for its own. Let a black cloud overshadow it, and let the darkness terrify it. Let that night be blotted off the calendar, never again to be counted among the days of the year, never again to appear among the months. Let that night be childless, let it have no joy. Let those who are experts at cursing, whose cursings could rouse the Leviathan, curse that day. Let its morning stars remain dark, let us hope for light, but in vain, may it never see the morning light. Curse that day for failing to shut my mother's womb, for letting me be born to see all this trouble. Why wasn't I born dead? Why didn't I die as I came from the womb? Why was I laid on my mother's lap? Why did she nurse me at her breast? Had I died at birth, I would now be at peace. I would be asleep and at rest. I will rest with the world's kings and prime ministers, whose great buildings now lie in ruins. I will rest with princes rich in gold, whose palaces were filled with silver. Why wasn't I buried like a stillborn child, like a baby who never lives to see the light? For in death the wicked cause no trouble, and the warrior at rest. Even captives are at ease in death, with no guards to curse them. Rich and poor are both there. And the slave is free from his master. Oh, why give light to those in misery, and life to those who are bitter? They long for death, and it won't come. They search for death more eagerly than for hidden treasure. They fill with joy when they finally die, and rejoice when they find the grave. Why is life given to those with no future? Those God has surrounded with difficulties I cannot eat for sighing. My groans pour out like water. What I always feared has happened to me. What I dreaded has come true. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest. Only trouble comes." And so we just read Job chapter 3, verse 1 through 26. And as I said before, our main focus is going to be our response to our loss. And so what we see in this passage that we just read, the first thing you have to understand is that Job, throughout the midst of all of his troubles, he did not cuss God. What we do see is that Job wants to die and give up on life, because of what we saw in the first chapter and the second chapter, where we have in the first chapter where Job lost all his possessions, all his cattle, everything that was valuable to him. He lost his house and his children, his home, his family, everything. He lost it all. And then in the second chapter, we see where, Satan comes in, wants to take his life. God says you can't take his life, spare him. But however, you can do whatever you want. He tried to attack Job's health. He just lost everything. And so we can see here, because of what he lost due to Satan, that made Job want to give up on life. So that's the first thing we see. And then the second thing is that we see that Job wants to take the easy way out. And that's what we see in the second one. And so really, if we go back to the first reason, the first thing we see when Job is trying to give up on life itself, Job wants to die. Job wants to die. I mean, he lost his children, his wealth, his cattle, his home. Job lost it all, and he's even right now suffering in sores. His health is deteriorating. So, right now, and I mean, it's just, imagine you can't wake up to see your children anymore. You can't wake up to say hey to your wife anymore. You can't wake up in your own bed feeling at ease anymore. You don't have the money to take care of yourself financially, and so everything that Job ever had, he lost, and is suffering greatly. And who wouldn't want to feel like giving up on life itself? I mean, just imagine just going through that. It's just sometimes it's just it's hard to explain, but it's just so much you can't imagine. Sometimes you just don't have any words to say. It's just a lot to process. But in our life, if we're going to apply it to our life, and our response, sometimes for us today, we do the same thing Job does. Sometimes we don't always. What we can do is we say, God, I don't know why this is happening. Why is this happening? And sometimes we use that as an excuse to wander far away from God. And we just feel like giving up on life itself, and we fall apart. And sometimes we lose sight of what God is trying to show us. And it's really hard, even though we know what's in front of us and what God wants us to see. And we just want to remain blind to what's in front of us because we're so focused on what's here on earth. Our family members, I mean, who wouldn't want their family members to die? I mean, no one wants that. Just imagine going through that. And we just don't give thanks to him. We don't say, hey, God, look, here's what's going on. It's just really a lot, and I have to sympathize with Job because of the complexity of that situation, and just Satan to the number. It's a lot, and I just can't. For me, as me being the reader of this of the book of Job, it's just you can sympathize with them. It's hard when you gotta remain faithful, but then you be like, yeah, I'm trying to remain faithful, but then yet my family is gone. And so it's really a lot to take in. And so I just don't really, sometimes you just feel like giving up on life itself. And we just, even though God is right here in front of us and God is trying to show us something, it's like, look, I'm trying to, I'm trying to show you something here, and I want you to see it. And then you be like, I see it, but it's right there in front of me. I see it, Lord, but come on, I just lost everything. I don't know if I can take it anymore. And that's when you just want to die. Then, that's how we deal with problems. That's sometimes our response to life, and we're human beings. We can't be like, oh, we're just going to be this perfect thing. That's not. No, we're going to have feelings. We're going to have griefs. We're going to have struggles. We're going to have all of these things, and it just humbles you, and then it breaks you down, and then it's like you just break down on your knees, and then the first thing you cry to is God, and you start crying on the floor like, you know what, God, I'm just about had it. I just don't know what to do anymore. I really don't. Job, one thing about Job is Job had everything. He praised God through it. He lost everything. He praised God through it. The problem is Job is human, and Job is still dealing with grief. He's dealing with struggles. Jesus even went through it, and so this is something that Job had to go through. This is just, it's really, it is a lot. I mean, if you think about the first chapter and the second chapter. And then, as we were saying before, it's just, that's why I brought up, sometimes it's just hard to see. It really is. As we can go ahead here, Job talks about, why wasn't I born dead? Why wasn't I just born dead? And why would someone say that? Job had to be going through so much. There's times where a person may think about suicidal thoughts, and that person is going through extreme grief, extreme emotional distress, extreme to the point where you want to take your own life, or where you feel frustrated. You be like, maybe I want to jump off this bridge, or maybe I want to do this. And a lot of times the reason those things happen is because we're trying to process what's going on and don't know how to to deal with what's on the inside, and we try to find some other means to escape that problem. And so our first response is to really try to find the easy way out, and the only easy way out is death, and that's the only thing out. And so, you know, guys, there's not much to this story. It's easy, it's simple. I summarized pretty much the entire chapter 3. If you go through chapter 3 in your book and you go back to Job chapter 3 verse 1 through 26, okay, stop, think about it for a second. What did Job lose in the first chapter? He lost his home, his possessions, his cattle. You know, he lost everything in the first chapter and the second chapter. As a result, Job's response to what happened here was, I can't take it. I want to take my own life. Or, not, excuse me, want to take my own life, but he wants to die. That's pretty much it. And so, there's really not a lot. I know a lot of pastors like to keep the story going and try to use other verses to it. It's really, you don't really need to add any other verses. And I try to keep, the way I try to keep this this thing going is I try to keep this very short, because a lot of people go to churches, and when they get out of churches, they don't have a lot of time to really go through and look at, you know, sermons online or short brief. That's the reason why I really make them as short as I do, is because when people get out, they get out of church, they want to spend time with their family, go home, and things like that. But it's really, I just summarized everything. Or they just, you know, it just really doesn't say anything else. That's just simply about it. Well, see you next time, and we'll continue next Sunday. We'll try to cover chapter 4 of Job, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you. Have a blessed day.